Welcome to the Peachtree Podcast. Peachtree Learning Center is a nonprofit in Middle Tennessee dedicated to training and discipling students in all the fine arts to become excellent and skilled in order to spread the kingdom of God into the world of the arts. On this podcast, we will discuss topics designed to encourage, uplift, educate, and equip people to proclaim the kingdom more deeply in their own families and communities.
Welcome back to our second episode, where we're going to share the rest of our panel discussion from our Homeschool Resource Day. I wanted to make special mention of Zach Henderson, who drove from his day job as an engineer to come and join our panel and got there a little bit after we started, but we were super grateful that he did. He himself homeschooled all the way through his career and then went on to college and has a master's degree in engineering and works in that field now, and has several of his own children and is already on that homeschool journey with his wife, Rachel. And we were very thankful that he was able to come and share his experience with us and his encouragement. So be sure and catch him halfway through this episode. We hope you enjoy listening to the rest of our panel discussion.
I feel like if there was one challenge in homeschooling, it's being able to, especially large families, be able to cater to your kids and be able to learn about them and focus on each one of them individually. And that's challenging, but I feel like homeschooling gives parents the ability and the opportunities to be able to do that in a very unique way. But I did make it through. I went on to engineering school here at Tennessee Tech, and I've been working as an engineer for 10 years. And so, we're embarking on this new adventure with my oldest, which she's all about it. I feel like one of the greatest things I remember, just kind of anecdotally, was at the beginning of every school year, just getting new books, new pencils. I mean, I just can't say enough great things about homeschooling. I feel like it instilled in me a desire to learn, to teach myself, to be a go-getter. And I'm really hoping to pass that on to my kids as well.
Yeah, and you came in a little bit late because you were working your day job and drove from Smithville to get here. So thank you very much for making that effort. So we've got a little bit of a crowd out here. I wanted to take my microphone, and go and see if anybody has any questions for anybody specifically, or just a general question you want to ask somebody.
So for those of us that haven't homeschooled yet or thinking about it, I guess I'm most curious, what's like the first day like? You know, because you have this huge amount of information you're supposed to impart on this person. So how do you get from like day one to the end? You know, what's that like?
I think probably the best piece of information I could say to that is to unschool yourself, because we come from a very Western mentality of how education's supposed to look like, where most of us grew up in public school, where we were sitting for 8 hours a day in a public schoolroom setting. And so I remember when I started 20 or whenever, how many years ago, thinking it had to look just like that. And then the things that we did being like, I mean, it's just 10 o'clock and we're done, and being like, this is fantastic. Should I be doing more? Okay, and so I was just telling some moms earlier, I think we have to unschool ourselves a little bit and realize that, one, we are tailoring our children's education for them. So that looks a lot different than in a room with 30 kids where they're all learning the same thing. Secondly, they are sitting in a classroom all day where they have PE, lunch, breaks, getting to classes, all of these things built in, where their actual instruction time is not really that much time. Now, when kids get into high school, obviously there's hours you need to be keeping up with, and there's a whole lot more expected of them when they get into high school. But especially those early elementary years, you're wanting to teach them to read, math, and write. It doesn't look like a school day looks in a public school setting. That's one of the hardest things, I think, to grasp and realize. Even my high schoolers, I mean, you need so many hours per your credit hour to count toward that credit hour, but at the same time, they would be finished with their schoolwork on some days in 4 hours. It depends on, like, their junior year is always really, really hard, so there's a whole lot more time. But does that answer your question?
I was just going to add, we looked at our school as really like a three-legged stool. So we have our schoolwork, which is our education. We have our service time where we do, even our littles do community service, or, maybe it's taking some homemade bread to a neighbor who's sick. So you have work, education, and service, and then work time. So built into our school day, a part of our schooling is learning to work, because again, keeping that end mind in view that, I want to produce a student who's going to be a productive member of society. How do I teach them those skills at those early ages? So having those chores built in, that's a part of a school day. And, for us, we get up and we have a kind of a loose schedule of, we start with our devotions, then we move on to, math. We try to do math first thing in the morning. And like Meredith said, as you get into high school, it does get a little bit more. But, when my son hit the age of 14, he wanted to go to work. And, at the age of 14, he rose to that occasion. And he's had a job ever since he was 14. And from the age of 14, he's done school kind of like a college student, really, where it was like, hey, he came home from work and then, he did a little bit of school, saw some friends, came back, did a little bit of school. But I kid you not, every Friday at 3 o'clock, those books were on my dresser ready with him to show me that it was done.
To be honest, my oldest daughter, like when we were traveling around the country, we started out when they were little with Veggie Tales, and then we went to Odyssey, and then we listened to sermon and debates. And those sermons and debates really inspired my oldest daughter to be an apologist. She was like an amazing person who could like defend the gospel. It was just inspiring. But anyway, so she originally wanted to go to college to somehow do that. She just loves history, which is interesting because I hated it when I was in public school. I hated history, but we actually grew to all of us loving history, and she ended up getting a degree in that just to finish. But now she finds she loves finance, and actually she might get a opportunity. I mean, she's a personal assistant to one of our managers who works with artists, and but she wants to like help recording artists with their finances, because usually they're so creative, they have no idea what to do with money when they finally get it. So that's her passion, and that's what she hopes to do. And then our son, I mean, he was just so good at math and physics that so engineering just seemed like a logical thing to do, and so he got a degree in physics and mechanical engineering and had this opportunity to go to Arizona. Unfortunately, I mean, I'm kind of sad, but happy for him to like be able to design the things he's designing. Is just amazing. So not that every kid has to go to college, but if that's a concern of yours that they won't be able to go to college if you homeschool, it's not a concern at all, because they'll be like all my kids are pretty much top of the class at college. They found college kind of easy, not completely. Engineering is really tough, but like the basic classes were like easier than what we did when we homeschooled. So.
And that was because you were very structured and kept them going and had lots of curriculum for them stacked up to do, right?
Well, I mean, no.
Exactly.
Well, in high school, you do have to meet some requirements.
Sure.
So we did meet those. But before high school, when you don't need to meet those requirements, it was pretty much a lot of reading and a lot of adventures and a lot of talking and a lot of doing life together. It was really amazing. It was like a gift. Yeah. So anyway, then I'm sorry, did you want to say? So our third child is, she's totally different. She's pursuing acting at Belmont. And originally she was doing accounting for 2 years, and then she decided, I really miss being creative. And if you're creative as an accountant, you get arrested. So she decided, why not try? I mean, probably might not make it, but why not? This is your chance to try. So she's doing that right now. And then our youngest is doing computer engineering, and he's got an internship at a job in Smithville. And it's amazing because he is my youngest, and Mikey is quite good at physics and math and everything. So my youngest always felt intimidated and not very smart. But I would just go, Finn, you're really smart. And he would just go, you're my mom. You just have to say that. Well, then he went to college, and shockingly, he did so well. He was like, oh my gosh, like it surprised himself. But anyway, so that's my.
I was just going to say, we keep saying about high school and there being requirements, and part of that is I guess I just feel the need to explain to any of you there, like, well, what are they talking about? And so if you register, which is a good idea, with an umbrella school, and to graduate in the state of Tennessee, there has to be certain requirements in language and science and history and fine arts and electives in order to graduate with a Tennessee state or a Tennessee diploma that would enable a child then to enter into college. And so that's what we're saying when we talk about requirements for high school. You can't just fly by the seat of your pants anymore in high school. You do have to have a plan, and you need to enter in as a freshman with that plan in mind, because you'll get to your end of sophomore, junior year and be like, oh no, we've messed up some things. And so, yeah, so your child might have to do it, which, what's worst case scenario? You do another year of high school. I mean, it's no big deal. But in order to be able to enter into college, there are requirements that have to be met.
So I have three that I homeschool. They currently come to Peachtree. My biggest question is, I have an 8-year-old, a 7-year-old, and a 5.5-year-old. And where do you draw the line for I guess what grade they're supposed to be in, and what you're teaching them, and how you separate them, how you keep them together, how you wrangle, like, do you use a leash? I mean, I guess just sometimes I find that I'm trying to focus on my daughter and improving her reading, and the boys are like, everybody's, and I'm like, how can I concentrate on each child being so close in age? And then that's my first question. And my second question is, at what point what grade they're in matters? Because coming to you're in first grade, we're doing the first level whatever in curriculum. And now I'm realizing it doesn't really matter what grade you're in, as long as you're being taught and learning and loved. And that's, coming here, I've learned that, so yeah.
I'm going to say one thing before, because I have a thought about that, and the thought that I have is, when my girls were little, I was very convicted that all I needed to do was teach them to love the Lord, to read, and to think. And if they can read and think, and they love the Lord, He's not going to let them fall, right? Aren't we told that? Like, if they know those things, I didn't have to worry about whether or not they were going to have a job that got them a 401k someday. I didn't have to worry about whether they were going to have a retirement plan. He's got them, right? And so we did use grades because I was still of that mindset, partly myself. But here at Peachtree, even, we quit using grade designations on the classes. We wanted it to be more about ages and abilities and skill set levels, even attention spans, more than what grade they were in. So that's my thought, is that if you've got three that close together, why not just let them do everything together for now and not worry about the grade separation thing? Somebody else might have another idea. And I'd love to hear, like, Vivian, did y'all do a lot of subjects together? Sarah's got some thoughts.
I actually have a thought exactly on this as you brought it up. And that is, so I grew up, a little tiny background. I went to public school in kindergarten, and then I was homeschooled first through high school. And I grew up going to like the huge homeschool conventions, and even like this environment really reminds me of that on a smaller scale, but an exciting local scale. And one thing that I'm just sitting here thinking about, and having worked with homeschoolers one-on-one for like 8 years now as a professional, just seeing a lot of different styles of homeschoolers and a lot of different styles of families, I see a lot of pressure as homeschooling being a competition to public school. And I think the more you can eliminate competition on a cultural level, and eliminating competition inside the home is really valuable. Because siblings, like we've talked a ton about being, like y'all have had great wisdom to share on, okay, let's keep the adult in mind that we're wanting to produce, which is great. But like we have all also had as the second generation, the experience of enjoying our siblings and never being in competition with our siblings. And I feel like that's really important, especially in the younger years. And then I'm also sitting here thinking about the importance of seasons for families and going, okay, well, we're in elementary season, so let's walk that out. You get to high school season. Okay, let's reevaluate everything else. What does high school season look like for my child and for this season? So I'll pass that on to you, moms, or anybody else.
Or actually, I was going to, did you have a thought, Zach? Were you going to say something about the idea of competition? And
Completely agree with Sarah in the sense that I think, like my wife, for example, was a quadruplet, and she said, in her experience, there was some of her siblings that really excelled on, the maths and the sciences, and then she was more on the creative side. And so as parents, it seemed like being able to, like I said earlier, just cater to your kids and realize that in some settings, eliminating competition is helpful. I think for me, I like competition. I feel like in certain settings, competition is great amongst siblings that can handle it. But you just got to learn your kids, and I'm experiencing that firsthand myself, just on the front edge of this homeschooling experience. So I think it just takes time to do that. And then I had a comment about credit hours and going into college. That kind of, in my experience, I think, did you mention dual enrollment, right? And then in addition to those, had a really good experience with CLEP, which is a program where you can actually gain credit on the front end of going into college, and if you want to test out of certain humanities and things like that in order to launch into more of the core classes, that's an option. Very easy to do and very cheap to do online as a homeschooler. And then also just testing out through your ACT scores. So that was a thought that came to my mind.
Thank you. That's very good.
As with children your kids' age, one of the beauties of homeschooling, right, is that there's so much that, since they're so close together, there's so much that you can do with them together. Like development, we often think in public school terms of development happening at a certain age, but the reality is that development is a spectrum. And so, like I think of when children learn to walk, not every child learns to walk at the same month, at the same age, at the same time, and we have to realize that about our kids. So there's so much that you can do together with your kids. And so find those things like history, art, music, read alouds, science, all those things when they're young, you can do that together. So everybody's at the same stage, you're only doing it once, and you're able to include, everybody in it. I mean, even when, with a 9-year gap between my kids, when we did science, we always included my daughter. Even though she was so much younger, I would sit her on my knee, sit her on my lap, and kind of talk to her at a level that she would understand, but yet my son was doing a dissection of a pig, and so she was learning, and to her it was just a natural thing. It wasn't like, oh, he's older and he's more equipped to do that. It was just this natural thing of all of us learning together, and that's kind of that atmosphere that I think is so beneficial for homeschool families. Is we create this atmosphere where we all acknowledge that we're not all at the same place, but we all have the same capability to learn. And so whatever you can do with them together, do it together. Now you're going to have to bring your oldest out to do a different math curriculum than your youngest, and that's okay. But if you're doing everything else together, then you've spent that time, your hearts have connected in that, and then they can go off pretty much and do something independently and are going to be satisfied while you're working with your oldest one, and then, however that works.
All right. Thank you guys for being here. I really appreciate all of you. Y'all can thank them for their time. I know you've enjoyed hearing from each of them. Thank you very much. That's going to conclude the panel, but there's plenty of resources still left to discover. We've got lots of fun stuff around the room, and my favorite part is over here. There's moms that have brought curriculum that they loved, that worked for them. Several of them are up here. Feel free to go back here and put your hands on their books and ask questions, and when they get back to their tables, ask them what worked for them and what children's learning styles worked for each book. And thank you guys very much for being here. And that'll wrap up our panel episodes. We, again, are very excited about this event and hope to host such an event again. We are very grateful for everyone who showed up and set up tables and shared their displays and their ideas and their thoughts and encouragement with the people that came. And we're also very grateful for all of our attendees. We hope you're blessed by this encouragement. And if you want to know anything else about this event or things that we held there, please feel free to give us a shout on email or visit our website. Thank you and have a blessed day.
Thank you so much for joining us today. To support this podcast, please go follow us on your podcast platform of choice. And if you're interested in knowing more about the work of Peachtree, please go visit our website at peachtreelearningcenter.com for more information.